I heard my daughter-in-law whisper, "She won't make it through the year. We just have to wait." That was the sentence that yanked me out of my feverish half-sleep. The words sliced through the crack in the door like a cold blade, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I lay in my bed, achy, drenched in sweat, lungs burning from the flu that had held me hostage for 5 long days. But that whisper shocked me back into myself. I blinked at the ceiling. I tried to convince myself I misheard, but then I heard my son's voice, my only child, soft, uncomfortable, but not disagreeing. "Just not right now, okay? She's sick. We can't rush it." I gripped the blanket with trembling fingers. My heart thudded painfully, not from fever, from betrayal. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe shallowly, to pretend I was asleep. Every instinct screamed to sit up, to confront them, to demand what they were planning. But I waited, listening, letting the truth drip into my chest like poison. "I'm telling you," my daughter-in-law hissed, "as soon as she signs the house over, we're free. No more babysitting an old woman. No more guilt. No more paying her bills. Free." She used the word free, as if I were a burden, a weight tied to their ankles, an obligation to endure until they could toss me aside. I swallowed hard. I felt the fever heat rise behind my eyes. My son, my sweet boy who used to bring me dandelions and stick drawings, my boy who promised at 8 years old he'd buy me a house someday and never let anyone disrespect me. He sighed. "Let's talk later. She might wake up, as if I were moments from death, as if my soul had already left the bed. And then came the sound that would haunt me, the quick shuffling of feet, the door closing, and soft laughter trailing down the hall. They were laughter, in the same house where I lay sick and overheard my own fate being plotted like a business deal. I turned my head slowly, my breath hitched from the effort. My fever blurred the edges of the room, but not enough to soften the sting of betrayal. The clock on my nightstand glowed 3:18 p.m., the same time I used to warm cookies in the oven when my son got home from school, the same time I used to sit by the window waiting for him after football practice, praying he wouldn't get hurt, the same time he used to call me from college saying, "Mom, I just needed to hear your voice." I let out a harsh, shaky exhale. What happened to that boy? What happened to the man he became? The fever made everything feel distant, unreal, like I was floating outside my own life. But the words they spoke, those stayed sharp, sharper than the ache in my bones, sharper than the sting in my eyes. "She won't make it through the year. As soon as she signs the house over, no more babysitting an old woman." I felt something inside me tighten. Not anger, not yet. Resolve. A slow, quiet resolve that curled its fingers around my heart and held it steady. I wasn't dying. I wasn't losing my home. And I damn sure wasn't handing anything over to 2 people who couldn't wait for me to disappear. My breath steadied. My fever throbbed. But my mind sharpened, because what they didn't know, what my daughter-in-law never bothered to ask, and what my son forgot long ago, was that I still had strength, quiet strength, the kind older women carry in their bones, and I wasn't as helpless as they believed. I pushed myself up inch by inch, gasping softly as the room tilted. I waited for the dizziness to settle. I wiped my forehead with the sleeve of my nightgown. Then I reached under my pillow. My fingers brushed the cold edge of something small, metallic, secret. A recorder, one I had used for years in my volunteer work at the community center interviews. They had no idea it was there. They had no idea I'd switched it on that morning, wondering if I'd ramble in my fever, wondering if I'd say something I'd regret later. But instead I caught something else, something bigger, something damning. Their whole whispered conversation right outside my door, caught in cold, clear audio. I felt the faintest smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Not joy, not satisfaction, certainty. I set the recorder down gently on my lap and pressed my palm over my chest, grounding myself. My breaths were shallow. My limbs were heavy. The fever still clawed at me. But for the first time in days, maybe weeks, I felt awake, truly awake. I whispered into the empty room. My voice was raspy, but steady. "They think I'm done. They think I'm weak. They think I'm dying." I let the silence stretch, heavy and deliberate. Then I said softly, "But they have no idea who they're dealing with." I lay back down, not in defeat, but in strategy, because the moment I felt well enough to stand without swaying, I would begin. I wasn't going to confront them with yelling, or tears, or accusations. No, I was going to do something far more effective. I was going to make them reveal themselves, publicly, undeniably, in a way no apology could erase, and they would never see it coming. I closed my eyes. Fever or not, my mind was already moving, planning, remembering connections I hadn't used in years, people who owed me favors, people who respected me when my own family didn't. But that came later. For now, I let the fever take me under again, not in weakness, but in preparation, because this humiliation, this betrayal, it was only the beginning, and they had no idea what I was about to hear next. I woke the next morning still weak but clearer. The fever hadn't broken, but something else had. My denial. For months, maybe years, I'd brushed off the little slights, the quiet comments, the long silences between my son and me. I told myself it was life, adulthood, marriage, distance. But lying sick in that bed, realizing they were planning my exit while I was fighting for breath, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I sat up slowly, each breath deliberate. The house was quiet, too quiet. My back ached as I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. 69 years old, and sometimes my spine felt every single one of them. But I'd worked hard all my life, jobs that didn't offer ergonomic chairs or fancy healthcare plans. I was born in Mississippi, raised in Birmingham, made my way north at 19 with one suitcase and $57 in my pocket. My mother told me, "Baby, go build the life this town won't let you have." So I did. I worked in diners first, then cleaning offices at night, then as an aide in a retirement home. Ironic, considering how many of those elders treated me like family when my own blood would one day forget I was human. But back then I didn't know any of that. Back then I was just trying to survive. When I had my son Marcus, everything changed. I remember holding him in the hospital, staring at his little wrinkled fingers and whispering, "I'll give you everything I never had." And I did. I worked double shifts, saved every extra penny, made sure he had books, tutors, winter coats, warm meals. I didn't date. I didn't take vacations. I didn't buy myself new clothes unless mine had holes. Every dream I had became fuel for his future. He grew up kind, soft-spoken, thoughtful. When he was 10, he came home crying one day. A kid had teased him for wearing second-hand sneakers. I thought he wanted new shoes, but no. He sat next to me on the couch, wiped his face with his sleeve, and whispered, "Mom, they said you look tired all the time, that you work too hard, that it's my fault." My heart cracked open. I cupped his cheeks and said, "Baby, nothing I do is your fault. I work because I love you, because you're worth everything." He hugged me so fiercely I thought my ribs would break. And that night, he left a crooked little drawing on my pillow, a picture of him standing on a big stage, holding a trophy, with me smiling in the crowd. At the bottom he'd written, "I'll take care of you someday, Mom." I believed him. I held on to those words for decades. But life has a way of wearing down even the sweetest souls. When Marcus went to college, he called every night at first, then every week, then once every few weeks. I told myself he was busy. Young men are supposed to spread their wings. I didn't want to cling. When he brought home the woman who'd become my daughter-in-law, I welcomed her with open arms. Her name was Elise. She was beautiful, polished, ambitious, but she never saw me. Not really. She smiled, but her eyes were always scanning my clothes, my furniture, my old car in the driveway. She'd ask Marcus, right in front of me, "Does your mom need help? Like financially?" As if poverty was dripping off me like sweat. Marcus would shush her, gently, embarrassed, but he didn't argue. That was the first shift. After they married, the distance grew wider. Marcus visited less. Elise stopped calling altogether. Holidays became shorter. Phone calls became rushed. And every year they seemed more disappointed in me. Disappointed that I lived simply, that I didn't wear designer clothes, that I still shopped with coupons, that my house, my little two-bedroom cottage, wasn't updated. One day, I overheard Elise telling her friend on the porch, "I swear the house smells old, like history you can't get rid of." I stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in soapy water, pretending the words didn't sting, but they did. They pierced. Still, Marcus occasionally showed glimmers of the boy he used to be, like the time he brought me soup when I had a cold, or fixed a broken step on the back porch, or hugged me a few seconds too long after a holiday dinner. But those moments were brief, too brief, and I started noticing something unsettling. Whenever Elise was around, Marcus became smaller, quieter, less himself. He deferred to her on everything, where they lived, how they spent money, who they spent time with. First, I thought it was just marriage dynamics, compromise, sharing decisions. But then, something else happened. Something I should have paid more attention to. One afternoon, a few months before I fell ill, I walked into my living room and found Marcus standing there, holding one of my old file boxes. I froze. Inside that box were papers from years ago. Papers my son had never seen. Papers that held truths I had kept to myself for decades. He was flipping through them, brow furrowed, lips pressed tight. "Marcus," I whispered. He jumped, slammed the lid shut, and set the box down. "I was just looking for the Wi-Fi password." The Wi-Fi password was taped to the side of the router. He knew that, but I let him lie. He was my son, my only son, and I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. What I didn't know was that Elise was waiting outside in the car, telling him to hurry up so they could get this over with. I didn't know what this was. Not yet, but the signs were there. The little changes, the quiet tensions, the short visits, the long silences, the searching looks Elise gave my house, the kind vultures give tired animals. And I, foolish, hopeful, loyal, still believed my son would never hurt me, still believed his childhood promise, still believed I mattered. But the truth was becoming impossible to ignore, because days before I fell sick, Elise Elise asked me casually as she scrolled through her phone. Have you ever thought about downsizing? I mean, it's a lot of house for you alone, right? I laughed it off, made a joke, changed the subject, but she didn't smile. She was studying me, my health, my energy, my finances, sizing me up, and now lying sick in my bed, listening to them plot behind my door. I finally understood. Every hint, every question, every sudden interest in my home, every quiet conversation I wasn't meant to hear. It all came together. My son had changed. My daughter-in-law never cared, and I had been living in a house filled with people waiting for me to disappear. But they were wrong about me. I had more strength left than they could ever imagine, and I wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. And I had no idea the next clue was already sitting in plain sight. I didn't have to wait long for the next strike. 3 days after I overheard them outside my bedroom door. 3 days of fever, aching lungs, and the silent war building in my chest. Marcus knocked gently and stepped in. He didn't sit beside me, didn't touch my hand, didn't even meet my eyes. He stood near the doorway like a contractor examining a job he'd rather not take. Mom, he started, rubbing the back of his neck. Elise and we think you should come stay with us for a while. I stared. He didn't mean visit. He meant move. My heart thudded. Most mothers dream about living close to their children. But this wasn't kindness. This was positioning. Why? I whispered. He cleared his throat and forced a chuckle. Well, this house is a lot to manage, and you're, not getting younger. There it was. The insult dressed up like concern. I pushed myself higher against the pillows. Even that small motion sent a tremor through my fingers, but I refused to let him see weakness. I've lived in this house for 37 years, Marcus. I know, Mom, I know. But Elise says. There it was again. Elise says. Always Elise. Always her voice in his mouth. What exactly does Elise say? I asked quietly. Silence. Then a shrug. That it might be better if you simplified your life. Simplified. As if I were an overstuffed closet they wanted to declutter. I didn't respond. Just looked at him until he grew uncomfortable. Then he said it. Softly, cautiously, but with Elise's fingerprints all over the words. And if you ever decide to sell, the market is really good right now. My throat tightened. The betrayal tasted metallic. This house wasn't just where I lived. It was where I raised him, where his father held him for the first time, where birthdays and Christmas lights and scraped knees and baby giggles lived. But to them, it was equity, a bargaining chip. Marcus, I whispered, do you want me to sell this house? His jaw twitched. He wouldn't answer. And there it was, the answer. He didn't stay long. Said he had errands. Said Elise was waiting in the car. He didn't hug me goodbye. Just mumbled, feel better, and slipped out like a stranger. When the door closed, the quiet felt heavy, accusing. I pressed my palm over my chest, like I could hold my heart together with sheer will. The recorder under my pillow suddenly felt heavier, more necessary. Because now, I knew for certain, they weren't waiting for me to get better. They were waiting for me to be weak enough to manipulate. And they thought this illness would break me. They were wrong. The following week, when I was strong enough to stand without gripping the dresser, I heard Elise's car screech into my driveway. She didn't knock. She didn't even call out. She pushed the door open and marched inside like she owned the place. Oh, she said when she saw me standing in the kitchen. You're up. Her tone wasn't relief. It was disappointment. I forced a polite smile. Feeling better. She set a bag of groceries on the counter. Nothing I liked, nothing she asked me about, and immediately started scanning my house like she was appraising it. She chirped. We can get so much more for this place if we repaint the walls. Buyers love cool tones. I stared at her. Buyers. She blinked innocently. Oh, I just mean someday. Thinking ahead. Thinking ahead to what? My grave? Then she walked into the living room and did the one thing that made my skin crawl. She ran her fingers over my mantle, over Marcus's childhood pictures, over my husband's folded American flag from his service, over my memories. She tapped the frame of our family photo and sighed dramatically. I guess we'll have to modernize all of this. As if she'd already taken control. She noticed me watching and flashed a sweet, poisonous smile. Don't worry, you won't have to do anything. We'll handle the decisions. You can just rest. Rest, meaning stay out of the way. But it was later, over a lukewarm cup of tea, when the real blow landed. Marcus arrived, and they insisted I sit at the dining table. They sat on either side of me, bodies angled inward like they were closing a deal. Marcus cleared his throat. Mom, we've been thinking. Elise placed her hand over his, squeezing, guiding. We think it's time you gave yourself some peace, she added with that syrupy voice she used around strangers. You've taken care of this house long enough. I raised an eyebrow. I've taken care of myself long enough too. She didn't laugh. Her eyes hardened just a fraction. Then she slid a folder across the table. My breath froze. Don't worry, she said quickly. It's not anything you have to sign today. We just want you to look. My stomach dropped. Inside was a typed up outline, a family transition plan they called it, with sections on estate adjustments, property liquidation, healthcare proxy, and at the bottom, Marcus and Elise listed as primary decision makers. They weren't hiding it anymore. They wanted control. My vision tunneled for a second, not from sickness, from realization. This wasn't about helping me. This was about securing their future and using mine to do it. I looked up slowly. Elise smiled like a wolf in pearls. Marcus stared at the table, ashamed, but not enough to stop any of it. And in that moment, as I sat there with bones still aching from fever, heart bruised from betrayal, something inside me clicked into place. Calm, cold, certain. I closed the folder gently. I'll think about it, I said. Elise lit up. Marcus looked relieved, but I wasn't agreeing. I was preparing, because without realizing it, they had just handed me the first piece of the evidence I needed. Their plan, in writing, signed and dated. And that wasn't all. As they left the house, laughing, whispering, confident, I noticed a slip of paper fall from Elise's purse. She didn't notice, but I did. I picked it up, unfolding it carefully, and when I read the handwritten note, my blood ran cold, and I had no idea the truth on that paper would change everything. I stood there in my hallway, holding that slip of paper between trembling fingers. It felt warm, like it had absorbed the heat of Elise's hand, but the words written on it made my blood run cold. It wasn't a shopping list. It wasn't a reminder. It wasn't anything innocent. It was a cost estimate, not for paint, not for renovations, but for a senior care facility 2 towns over. A place I'd heard about. A place that didn't have a great reputation. A place families sent people they didn't want to deal with. My name was written at the top. Projected transition date, July 14th. Projected transition. Like I was a shipment. And the date, 6 weeks from now. They were planning to remove me from my own life. I stared at the paper so long that the numbers blurred together. The floor felt like it tilted slightly under my feet. Not from sickness, from clarity. They weren't just eager for me to leave. They had a timeline, a schedule, a budget, a plan, and they intended to carry it out whether I agreed or not. I placed the paper on the counter, my hands shaking so badly I had to grip the edge to steady myself. I stared straight ahead at the photos on the wall, at the memories pinned up like a gallery of a life I built with my bare hands. How dare they? How dare they pack up my existence like old furniture? How dare they decide where I should live, when I should leave, what should happen to me? And worst of all, how dare they assume I couldn't fight back? I sat down slowly, letting the chair take some of the weight my legs couldn't hold. The afternoon light streamed through the kitchen window in soft gold streaks, catching the dust in the air like floating glitter. It was beautiful, calm, familiar. This was my home, my sanctuary, my safe place, and they were plotting to take it from me. The only thing I'd ever truly owned, the only piece of stability I'd been able to give myself after a lifetime of scraping by. This house held my triumphs, my losses, my laughter, my grief, my husband's ghost, my son's childhood. I curled my fingers into a fist. They weren't taking it. I pressed the slip of paper flat on the table, smoothing the creases. Then I placed it with deliberate care inside a folder I was about to start filling, because the moment I realized they had a timeline on my life, I knew I needed one of my own. Not for them, for me, and mine was going to be deadly precise. Later that week, when my fever broke and my strength started returning, I stepped outside for the first time in days. The sun hit my face, warm, gentle, almost forgiving. I stood there, breathing deeply, letting the fresh air clear away the last ghost of weakness. I heard a car door slam. Then, "Oh, you're out of bed." Elise's voice, sharp, surprised, not pleased. She stepped out of her SUV wearing a sundress and sunglasses, scanning me up and down like she was assessing livestock. "You should be resting," she said. "I'm feeling better." "That's good." She tried to smile, but it barely touched her lips. She walked toward me, the gravel crunching under her heels. I wanted to discuss the plan again. "Marcus and I think." I raised a hand, calm, respectful, quiet. Her words stopped midair. "You've been thinking a lot," I said. She blinked. "Yes, well, someone has to." "Someone?" "Meaning, not you." My jaw tightened. "I appreciate your concern," I replied evenly, "but I'm not ready to leave my home." She shifted, annoyance flickering in her eyes. "This isn't about ready or not," she said, a bit too quickly. "It's about safety, stability, harmony." Harmony. Like I was the dissonant note ruining her perfect melody. She continued, her voice syrupy but her energy impatient. "Look, older people often struggle with big decisions. Can be overwhelming. You don't have to think about every detail. We've already handled most of it." Handled. Past tense. My fingers curled slightly. "And why?" I asked softly. "Were you carrying around a cost estimate for a nursing facility with my name on it?" Her face drained of color so fast I almost felt sorry for her. "Almost," she stuttered. "I what?" That was preliminary. Just information. It had a date on it." "Well, yes, but that was just a placeholder. And my name." She froze. Then she tried to recover. "We're just just preparing in case something happens. Your health hasn't been great lately. We want to be ready. My voice stayed calm, quiet, controlled. You were preparing for me to leave my home in 6 weeks. Her jaw twitched. I saw the real Elise peek out, the one who hid behind polite smiles and soft tones but sharpened her words like knives. Look, she snapped. You have to understand that Marcus and I have a life. We can't spend every weekend checking on you. If we don't put a plan in place now, you might end up being a burden later. Burden. There it was. The truth. Simple. Ugly. Raw. I took a slow breath. And my son agrees? I asked. She smiled, acidic and victorious. Marcus will do what's best for us. She didn't even say best for you. Only us. She turned to walk back toward her car, but something fell from her bag again. Careless, rushed. Another paper. I bent slowly, picked it up, and my breath caught. This was worse than the first one. It was an email printout sent from Elise to a real estate agent. Subject: ready to move forward. Elder home will be vacated soon. Vacated, like a rental. And under that, we expect access to the full property no later than mid-July. She will be placed by then. Placed, like an object. A dog, a plant, a misplaced box. Not a human, not a mother, not someone who had given up her entire life to raise the man she married. I folded the paper with steady hands, even though I felt like screaming. For the first time since this nightmare began, my grief burned into something colder, sharper, more dangerous. I wasn't dealing with misguided concern. I wasn't dealing with misunderstandings. I was dealing with people who wanted to erase me, to take what I built, to take what I earned, to reshape my life into something convenient for them. They thought they had all the power, the control, the narrative. They thought I was weak, but they had made one fatal mistake. They had forgotten who raised Marcus, who fought through poverty, who survived widowhood, who worked 3 jobs and still found the strength to tuck a child into bed with love. They forgot I wasn't easy to break. I tucked the papers into my folder, my growing folder, and whispered to the quiet air, "You want a plan? Fine, let's make one." Because now I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I had quietly started gathering the tools, and I had no idea the next piece of evidence would come from someone I never expected. I didn't sleep much after finding that second document. All night I lay awake, listening to the creaks of the house, feeling the weight of every memory pressed into these walls. But beneath the fear, beneath the humiliation, beneath the ache of betrayal, a plan was forming. Not revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. The next morning, while I was sorting through the folder, my evidence folder, as I'd begun quietly calling it, I heard a knock at the door. A soft one. Gentle. Respectful. That alone ruled out Marcus and Elise. I opened it slowly, unsure of who could be visiting so early. And there he was. Mr. Thompson. My neighbor of 22 years. Retired firefighter. Widower. Quiet, polite. The kind of man who mowed his lawn in straight lines and waved at everyone. He held a small container in his hands. "Morning," he said with a warm smile. "Heard you were sick. Thought I'd bring you some of my chicken soup." For a moment, just a moment, my chest softened. Someone cared. Someone noticed. "I thank you," I whispered. "May I step in?" he asked gently. I nodded. He sat at my kitchen table like he had done a few times over the years, mostly during storms or neighborhood meetings. We weren't close, not really, but there was always kindness between us. The quiet, dependable kind. He pushed the soup across the table. "You look better than the rumors say," he said with a chuckle. I blinked. "Rumors?" He scratched his chin. "Well, your daughter-in-law mentioned to my niece that you were having a hard time. Said you wouldn't be on your own much longer." A chill ran through me. "Did she say anything else?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, she said she and your son were taking care of your arrangements." Arrangements? Like funeral arrangements? Like I was already gone. I swallowed hard. "And she said your house might be hitting the market this summer." My hand tightened around the edge of the table. "She said that," I whispered. He frowned. "That's why I came by. It didn't sound right. Not from you." My eyes burned, not with tears but with humiliation. These people weren't just planning in secret. They were broadcasting it, speaking about me like I was furniture already tagged for pickup. I took a slow breath. "Mr. Thompson, may I show you something?" He nodded. I opened my folder and slid the papers toward him. The care facility estimate, the email, the transition plan. His jaw clenched. He read every line, slowly, methodically, the way firefighters are trained to assess danger. When he finished, he set the papers down with trembling hands. "Good Lord," he murmured. "They're railroading you." I closed my eyes for a moment. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way that hurt. He leaned in, voice low. "You know, you don't have to go through this alone." I opened my eyes, surprised. "You're stronger than they know," he continued. "But even the strongest people need backup sometimes." "Backup?" I echoed softly. He nodded, then said something that made everything in my body go still. "My brother-in-law is an attorney." My breath caught. "A good one," he added. "Estate law, elder protection, real sharp. He helped my mother when my cousins tried to take her property." I stared at him. A real attorney. Someone who understood these kinds of traps. Someone who could help me navigate the storm Elise and Marcus had planned. Would he talk to me? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Thompson smiled gently. He'll come today if I ask. True to his word, an hour later a tall man in his early 50s, dressed in a navy suit, stepped into my home. His name was Samuel Everett. He introduced himself with a firm handshake and a gaze that saw everything without making me feel small. Tell me everything, he said. So I did. I told him about the conversation outside my bedroom door, the pressure to move, the folder they gave me, the timeline, the way they spoke about me like I was invisible. I didn't even show him the recorder yet. I needed to see if I could trust him first. He listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, taking brief notes. When I finished, he tapped his pen on the table. What they're doing, he said slowly, is coercion, a form of elder manipulation, and depending on how far they take it, it can be criminal. A slow chill slid down my spine. Criminal, he continued. They're trying to get control of your assets by creating a sense of urgency, by isolating you, overwhelming you, and convincing you you're incapable of making decisions. He lifted the transition plan with a gloved hand. This document alone tells me they've been planning this for longer than they've admitted. I swallowed. My voice came out small. So what do I do? He gave a slow, confident smile, the kind that made me feel stronger just by sitting across from him. You do nothing. I blinked. Let them keep showing their hand, he said. The more confident they get, the sloppier they'll become. And when the time is right, he tapped my folder. You're going to show them they underestimated the wrong woman. I exhaled shakily. The room felt different, lighter somehow. Not safe, not yet, but no longer suffocating. Then slowly, I reached under my pillow on the chair beside me and pulled out the recorder. I placed it on the table. Samuel raised an eyebrow. What's on that? He asked. I pressed play. The moment Elise's whisper spilled into the room, she won't make it through the year. Samuel's eyes sharpened like a hawk's. When Marcus responded with a hesitant, we can't rush it. Samuel sat up straighter. By the time the recording ended, he let out a long breath. This, he said firmly, is your insurance policy. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until it escaped my chest. He leaned forward, voice calm but filled with steel. Do not confront them. Do not change your behavior. Do not sign anything. I won't. I'll prepare the paperwork to protect your home, your medical rights, and your estate. Quietly, legally, completely. My throat tightened. You're not alone in this, he added gently. You have allies. Allies. Something warm flickered in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. After Samuel left, I stood in my living room, staring at the walls that had watched me grow older, watched my child grow up, watched my husband fade. And I whispered to myself, you're not taking this from me. Then I placed the recorder and the papers back into the folder, my armor. Because Samuel was right. Marcus and Elise were growing brazen, confident, careless, and people who think they've already won always make mistakes. And their biggest mistake was still on its way, delivered by someone I least expected. The house felt different after Samuel left. Not bigger, not safer, but steadier. Like the walls themselves stood a little taller, on my side again. I made myself a cup of mint tea, holding the mug with both hands to quiet the faint tremor still lingering from the fever. The steam warmed my face, but my mind was far away, replaying every word Marcus and Elise had whispered outside my bedroom door. Every lie, every plan, every assumption that I was too old, too tired, too sick to fight back. They didn't know me at all. I sat at the kitchen table, slowly sorting the papers back into my folder. The care facility estimate, the real estate email, the transition plan, the recording, all neat, all precise, all quietly devastating. Then I noticed something. A thin envelope tucked inside the pocket of the folder, one I hadn't put there. A plain white envelope with no name. I frowned. Where had that come from? I slid my finger under the flap and opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printout, an invoice, paid to Merrington Legal Consulting Group, amount $475. Description, document preparation, accelerated estate planning, client Elise R. Last name blurred from ink smear notes, draft revised will for mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, me. My breath caught. My hands turned cold. Revised will. They were preparing my will behind my back. I pressed a palm to the table to steady myself. The room didn't spin this time, not from sickness, from clarity. They weren't waiting for me to sign anything. They were creating documents on my behalf, trying to anticipate my signatures, trying to box me into a corner I wouldn't see until it was too late. I folded the invoice with blunt, heavy movements and placed it into the folder. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't fear-talking. It was evidence. Cold, hard, undeniable evidence that they weren't just pushing boundaries. They were crossing them with full intent. My chest tightened. My pulse thudded in my throat. How long had they been planning this? Why? What had changed? As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed on the table. Marcus. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to hear my son's voice, but I answered anyway. Not out of love, out of strategy. Hey mom, he said. His tone was cheerful, almost too cheerful, forced. How are you feeling? Stronger, I said softly. And you? Oh, you know, busy. Lots going on. I waited. He hesitated, then cleared his throat. So, Elise and I want to come by tonight. We found some documents we need you to look at. My stomach dropped. Documents. More forms. More pressure. More manipulation. What kind of documents? I asked, keeping my voice soft. Oh, just some stuff for your future plans, he said casually. Don't worry, Elise printed everything. It's basically ready. Basically ready. Like my life's decisions were a template they could fill without my consent. All right, I murmured. Come by. He exhaled in relief. That's great, Mom. And maybe think about being open-minded tonight, okay? We're trying to help you. Help. That word had lost all meaning coming from him. I'll listen, I said quietly. When I hung up, I sat still for a long time. The mint tea had gone cold. The house hummed in the soft afternoon light, and a thought crossed my mind, sharp, surprising, liberating. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of losing the house. Not of being pushed somewhere I didn't belong. Not even of Marcus turning his back on me. The fear had burned itself out. All that remained was resolve. I reached for my phone and dialed Samuel. He answered on the first ring. Everything okay? They're coming tonight, I whispered, with more papers. Good, he said, voice steady. Let them. Keep everything they give you. Don't sign a thing. I won't. I'll have protective filings ready by tomorrow afternoon, he added. Once they're in place, they'll be locked out of every legal loophole. Locked out. The phrase tasted sweet. After the call, I took a slow walk around the house to calm my nerves. My hand brushed the worn wood of the banister. I paused at the framed photo of Marcus at 5 years old, missing his 2 front teeth. I touched the quilt I made during my first winter in this home. Patches from old dresses, baby blankets, and scraps of memory stitched into one warm story. This house was my life story, and no one, no matter how slick, how entitled, how cunning, was taking it from me. An hour before they arrived, I brewed fresh herbal tea, opened the windows for air, and sat at the dining table. I placed my folder neatly to the side, visible but untouched. Then I waited. I didn't tremble this time, didn't fidget, didn't feel that powerless heaviness pressing on my ribs. I felt grounded, prepared. The doorknob turned. The door swung open. Elise entered first, bright smile plastered on her face, too bright. Marcus followed, nervous eyes darting around like he expected something to jump out of the shadows. Hi, Mom. Elise chirped a shade too loud. We brought the paperwork. Of course they did. They sat across from me at the dining table. Elise unbuttoned her portfolio and slid a stack of documents forward. This is exciting, she said, voice coated in artificial sugar. These are just preliminary agreements, nothing binding, just your acknowledgement that changes are coming. Acknowledgement, a psychological trick. Get me to agree in spirit before locking me into specifics. Marcus leaned in. We really want what's best for you. I lifted the first page. It was a contract, statement of intent to transition residency and estate responsibilities. Signed, prepared, ready for me to scribble my name like a fool. I looked up slowly. Why is there a blank for my signature? I asked. Elise blinked. That's where you sign. I know, I replied. I'm asking why this is prepared without my consent. Her jaw tightened. Marcus swallowed hard. Well, she said carefully, we assumed. You assumed I would obey, I finished softly. The air shifted. Elise's smile cracked. Marcus stiffened. I closed the folder of their documents gently. Then I slid my own folder forward just 1 inch, not opening it, not revealing anything, just letting them see it existed. Marcus's eyes darted to it nervously. What's that? He asked. Oh, I said calmly. Just some things I've gathered. Notes, papers, conversations. Elise's face lost a shade of color. I didn't say more. I didn't have to. Elise forced a laugh. Anyway, let's finish going through these. No, I said softly. They froze. I'll review your documents, I continued, but I won't sign anything tonight, or tomorrow, or anytime soon. Marcus opened his mouth, but I lifted a hand, gentle, firm. And you won't pressure me again. He closed it. Slowly, something in the room changed. A shift of power so subtle yet unmistakable. For the first time they were unsure. Unsure of their influence. Unsure of their timeline. Unsure of me. And the beauty was, they had no idea how protected I was becoming. Elise gathered the papers with stiff fingers. Marcus mumbled something about checking in tomorrow. I simply nodded. Calm, steady, silent. When the door closed behind them, I let out a long, slow breath. Not relief. Not victory. Preparation. Because the next step wouldn't be private. It would be very, very public. And I had no idea the perfect opportunity was only days away. The opportunity arrived disguised as something innocent. A celebration. Marcus's company was hosting a charity dinner. One of those those fancy, dressy events where people clink glasses and pretend they care about causes while networking for promotions. Mom, Marcus said over the phone, it would mean a lot if you came. Elise really wants you there. Elise wants me there. Not we want you there. Not I want you there. Her. Why? Because people like Elise love an audience. They love applause. They love the illusion of a perfect family. And they love having a prop to complete the picture. I knew immediately this would be the stage, the moment, the arena. So I said yes. I spent the next few days preparing myself, not with fancy clothes or glittering jewelry, but with something far more dangerous. Calm. I organized my folder. I spoke twice more with Samuel. He told me everything was in place to secure my home and assets legally. Whatever they try next, he said, they won't succeed. And the confrontation? I asked. He smiled. Sometimes the truth needs witnesses. I nodded, because if a tree falls in the forest, who cares? But if a son and his wife humiliate their own mother in a room full of peers, that echoes. The night of the dinner, I dressed slowly, carefully. A navy blue dress. Simple, elegant. A gold brooch my husband gave me on our 10th anniversary. Gray curls pinned in a soft updo. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a weak, sickly old woman. I saw someone rising back into herself. Someone who had been underestimated for far too long. When I arrived at the venue, a gleaming hall with chandeliers dripping light, people milled around in crisp suits and flowing gowns. But before I could take 2 steps inside, I heard Elisa's sharp little gasp. Oh, there you are. She rushed toward me, arms open but lips tight. You made it, she said, but her eyes flit over my appearance with annoyance. You look better. I smiled. Recovery can be miraculous. She didn't like that answer. Marcus approached more slowly, hands in his pockets, avoiding my gaze. Glad you're here, Mom. I touched his arm lightly. He flinched. Barely, but enough. They escorted me inside, but not toward the main tables. No, toward the side, the back, the shadowy edge of the room where the servers walked by with trays. Here, Elise said, guiding me toward a small, lonely table near the kitchen doors. This is probably best for you. You'll be more comfortable. More comfortable, meaning out of sight, meaning less embarrassing. You can see everything from here, Marcus added, forcing a smile. Oh, I could see everything, including their shame, as they drifted off to network, smiling, laughing, clinking glasses. I watched them. Elise floating like she owned the place. Marcus following like a shadow. They look confident, too confident, and people who feel invincible make sloppy mistakes. I rested my hand on my purse, the folder tucked safely inside, the recorder too. Everything was ready. About 15 minutes later, when the tables began filling, Elise suddenly turned and spotted me still sitting alone. Her eyes flashed with annoyance, because her perfect image didn't include a mother-in-law abandoned in the corner. She marched over, smile tight as a drum. Why aren't you mingling? She hissed softly, the sweetness gone. You told me to sit here, I replied calmly. Well, don't just sit. People are going to think. She stopped herself. Yes, I asked, tilting my head. Her jaw clenched. Never mind. Just try to smile. Don't look so tense. You put me by the kitchen, I said gently. It's not tense. It's drafty. She forced a laugh and rushed back to Marcus. I let her go, because the humiliation wasn't the main event. It was the appetizer. The real moment began when the MC stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Dinner will be served shortly. Everyone began sitting, clustered near the front. Marcus and Elise took their places at a large round table with executives, friends, polished couples. I was still alone, until a familiar voice beside me said, "This seat taken?" I looked up. Mr. Thompson, in a dark suit, clean-shaven, standing tall. I almost laughed from relief. He nodded toward the seat. Thought I'd keep you company. I placed my hand softly over his. Thank you. But the real surprise came seconds later, when someone else approached. Samuel, dressed in charcoal gray, holding a drink, looking straight at Elise and Marcus like he already knew their weaknesses. He leaned down and murmured, "Ready?" I nodded. "Let them make the first move," he said. "They always do." So we waited. Now I wasn't the woman shoved to the back. I was the woman with an audience, and 2 very important allies. Dinner began. Soft music played. Wine flowed. I watched Elise laugh loudly, tossing her hair. I watched Marcus pretend everything was normal, even as his eyes occasionally darted back toward me. But then the moment arrived. During dessert, Elise stood and tapped her spoon on her glass. "Excuse me, everyone." The room quieted. She flashed that camera-ready smile. "We just wanted to say a few words." I blinked. Words? Oh, this was going to be rich. She grabbed Marcus's arm, tugging him to stand next to her. "As many of you know," she announced, "Marcus and I have been handling a lot lately. Family responsibilities, big decisions, grown-up things no one prepares you for." The crowd chuckled. I didn't. "And," she continued, "we're proud to say we're helping Marcus's mother transition into the next stage of her care." My chest tightened. People turned to stare at me, some sympathetic, some confused, some judgmental. Transition. Care. She said it publicly like it was already done, like I was incapable, like I was a weight they deserved applause for carrying. Marcus looked trapped, uncomfortable but silent. Elise squeezed his arm and raised her voice a little louder. We've arranged everything so she won't have to worry about her home or her, well, anything. We're taking care of all the decisions from now on. A ripple spread through the room. She kept going. We just wanted to share that because family is important, and we believe honoring our elders means making sure they're placed someplace. She almost said it. She caught herself, but the damage was done. Samuel leaned to me, whispering, now. I stood up, slow, steady, quiet. A few heads turned, then a few more, until the room fell into a soft hush. My voice didn't shake, not once. I'd like to speak, I said gently. Elise froze mid-smile. Marcus's face drained of all color. The MC handed me the microphone, and I walked to the center of the room. Every step measured, every breath calm, because this was my moment, my truth, my dignity, and they were about to discover exactly who I really was, and they had no idea what I was about to reveal next. The microphone felt cool in my hand, not heavy, not intimidating, just steady, like the truth waiting in my chest. I took a breath, lifted my chin, and let my eyes sweep the room, the chandeliers glimmering above, the polished tables, the curious faces watching with so many assumptions. Then I looked at Marcus, my son. His eyes were already filling with alarm. I smiled softly, the kind of smile a mother gives before she says something honest. Thank you. I began, my voice even. I didn't expect to speak tonight, but something needs to be addressed. A hush settled over the hall. You could hear silverware being set down, a chair creak, a breath catch. I continued. I've heard a lot lately about my transition, my next stage, my care arrangements. A few people looked at Elise. Good. And since my situation is being discussed publicly, I said gently, I think it's only fair that I get to share my side. I paused, long enough for tension to curl around the room like smoke. First, I said, I want to make something very clear. I turned slightly toward Elise. I am not going anywhere. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elise's smile twitched, then vanished completely. Marcus swallowed hard. My home, I continued, is not for sale. It is not on the market. It is not part of anyone else's future plans. It is mine, and it will remain mine. The firmness in my voice surprised even me. Elise stepped forward, panicked. Okay, let's not make this dramatic. We were just trying to explain. I lifted a hand slowly. She stopped mid-sentence. I'm not finished. Someone in the back coughed to hide a laugh. Second, I said, turning back to the audience, there have been conversations, private conversations, ones that were not meant for me to hear. My voice stayed calm, almost soft, but I did hear them. Elise's eyes widened. Marcus stiffened, and because they were spoken outside my bedroom door, because they were whispered while I was sick, I made sure to keep a record. The room fell completely silent. I opened my purse, pulled out the small recorder, and held it up. Gasps rippled like a wave. Elise lunged forward a step, voice cracking. You can't just. I can, I replied quietly, and I will. I pressed play. Her voice filled the elegant hall. She won't make it through the year. We just have to wait. People's heads jerked toward her, faces twisted in shock, repulsion, disbelief. She went pale as paper. Marcus's voice followed, soft, hesitant, but undeniable. Just not right now, okay? She's sick. We can't rush it. That was the sound of a son betraying his mother. A sound no one in that room would ever forget. A heavy silence fell, so dense it felt physical. A click stopped. Then I spoke, still calm. Those were the words spoken about me, in my home, while I was ill and vulnerable. I let that sink in. Slowly, deliberately, people shifted uncomfortably. A woman near the front wiped a tear. When I heard those whispers, I said, I realized something important. I looked directly at Elise. You weren't planning to care for me. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. You were planning to remove me. Elise's voice burst out high and desperate. Okay, this is a misunderstanding. No, I said softly. This is the pattern. I gestured to the side. Samuel stepped forward. People turned, recognizing authority when they saw it. This is my attorney, I said. Elise's mouth dropped open. Attorney, she sputtered. You got a lawyer? I needed one, I replied. After receiving these, Samuel handed me my folder. I lifted 3 papers, held them just high enough for the crowd to see, not read. The facility placement estimate, the real estate timeline, the elder care documents you drafted for me. Elise's knees buckled slightly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. My son and his wife, I said steadily, tried to force my signature. They planned to move me into a care facility without my consent. They contacted real estate agents behind my back. They rehearsed explanations for others so I'd look helpless. And they assumed because I'm older, because I was sick, that I wouldn't notice. I paused, breathing through the tremble rising in my chest. And they were wrong. The entire entire hall sat frozen in shock. Then slowly whispers began, angry, disbelieving, sympathetic, outraged. Elise sputtered forward, tears clinging to her lashes. "You're twisting things. We were trying to help you. By deciding my future?" I asked quietly. "By stripping my rights? By planning around my death?" She burst into sobs, but the room didn't comfort her. They saw through it. All of it. Marcus finally stepped forward, voice cracking with panic. "Mom, we were just trying to." "To what?" I whispered. "To control my home, to access my savings, to make your life easier by ending mine." His face collapsed into pain. "No, Mom, it wasn't like that. Elise said we had to," she said. He stopped. The truth slipped out. He blamed her. Her head snapped toward him. "How dare you?" "Enough," I said softly, and they froze. I held the microphone with steady fingers. "Tonight," I said, "you tried to humiliate me publicly." I shook my head gently. "Instead, you humiliated yourselves." A murmur of agreement swept through the room. "And to everyone here," I continued, "I want you to know I am not weak. I am not dying. I am not confused. I am not a burden." I let each word land like a steady drumbeat. "I am your neighbor, your friend, a woman who built her life inch by inch, and I will not be erased." I looked at Marcus, his eyes wet, his shoulders trembling. "For you," I said softly, "I have no anger left, only sadness." His face crumpled. "For you," I said to Elise, "I have nothing left at all." Her mouth fell open, her shock absolute. "And as for my home," I concluded, lifting my chin, "it has been legally secured, protected, untouchable. As of this afternoon." Gasps erupted, some relieved, some astonished. Samuel stepped closer, arms folded. Marcus's face drained. Elise nearly collapsed. Then I gave the final blow. Not cruel, just true. This was my story to tell, not yours. I placed the microphone down. The hall broke into soft applause, hesitant at first, then growing. Not for drama, not for spectacle, for justice. As I walked back to my table, head high, shoulders straight, something in me felt lighter, stronger, freed. But the night wasn't over, because after the applause faded, after people returned to their conversations, after the room exhaled, my son approached me with a look I had never seen before. Fear, guilt, love, regret, all tangled into one trembling expression. And what he said next would break my heart and begin its healing. The charity hall still hummed with low conversation, but everything felt muted after my reveal, like all the noise had been pushed to the edges of the room. I could feel eyes following me, not with pity, not with judgment, with respect, a respect I hadn't felt in a long time. I sat back down at the small table near the kitchen. Funny how that corner no longer felt like a punishment. Mr. Thompson gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Samuel stood nearby like a solid oak tree, quiet, strong, present. And then I heard Marcus, "Mom, please." His voice cracked on the second word. I turned. He stood there with his suit jacket open, tie loose, hair a little wild from running his fingers through it, just like he used to when he was a boy trying to confess something. His face was blotchy, eyes red. But what struck me most was how young he suddenly looked. Not the grown man who'd stood beside Elise on that stage. Not the man who had lied, planned, and avoided. The boy he used to be, trying to find his way back. He sank into the chair across from me as if his legs had given out. "Mom, I'm so sorry." His voice trembled. I stared at him for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. Not to be cruel, to let the weight of his own choices settle where it belonged. He swallowed hard. "I didn't." He stopped. Started again. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't want to hurt you." Tears gathered on his lower lashes. I got scared. Elise kept telling me things, saying you were worse than you said, saying we had to act fast, saying," he broke off, voice collapsing, "saying I'd regret it if I didn't take responsibility." I exhaled slowly. "Responsibility," I repeated quietly. He nodded, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand. "She made it sound like if we didn't step in, you'd fall apart, or lose the house, or end up helpless. She said she was thinking of the future, of us." I held his gaze. "And you believed her?" He flinched. For the first time, he didn't try to excuse himself, didn't try to twist anything. He nodded. "Yes, I did." Tears spilled freely now. "I thought I was doing the right thing, Mom. I swear I did. But I see now it wasn't right. It wasn't fair. And it wasn't mine to do." He leaned forward and placed both hands on the table, fingers trembling badly. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." His words cracked something inside me, not the part that had been betrayed, the part that remembered love, the part that remembered the little boy who tucked dandelions behind my ear and whispered promises into my neck. I took his hands. He let out a broken sob. "Marcus," I said softly, "I love you. I always will. But love does not erase consequences." His chin quivered. He nodded. "I know. And it does not erase what I need now." He braced himself. "What do you need?" he whispered. "First," I said gently, "I need space." He blinked. "Space?" "Yes." I kept my voice calm, even, firm. "I need time away from you, away from Elise, away from all of this. I need room to breathe, to heal, to feel my home again without fear. His eyes closed tightly in pain. I understand, he whispered. Second, I continued, I need boundaries, clear ones. Anything, he said. Just tell me. You don't come to the house uninvited. You don't bring documents. You don't bring suggestions. And you don't bring a lease. He absorbed each rule like a blow, but he didn't argue. I agree, he whispered. Third, I said, voice softening just a fraction. You need to figure out who you are without someone else's voice in your head. He swallowed hard because he knew exactly what I meant. Mom, I didn't realize how much I let her push, how much I let her decide. That's something you must face. I squeezed his hands. Not for me, for you. Tears streamed freely down his cheeks. I want to make this right, he said. I want to be your son again, the one you raised. A faint tug behind my ribs. Then show me, I whispered. Show me through your actions. Behind him, Elise stood frozen near the dessert table, eyes wide, tear-stained, furious, terrified. She'd overheard everything. Good, because she needed to understand something clearly. I wasn't afraid of her. I wasn't bending. I wasn't handing over anything. Not my home, not my dignity, not my son. She took a shaky step toward us, mouth opening, but Marcus turned sharply. Elise, he said, voice low and unfamiliar. Go home, she gasped. What? Marcus, go home. It wasn't anger. It was awakening, real awakening. She spun, grabbed her purse, and hurried toward the exit, humiliated, panicked, knowing the spotlight she loved had just burned her. Marcus's shoulders slumped. I don't know what happens next, he whispered. You don't have to, I said. One day at a time. He nodded, wiping his face again. Then he did something that broke me open in the quietest, softest way. He stood, stepped to my side, and hugged me. Not the shallow, distracted hug he'd given in recent years. A boy's hug, a son's hug, strong, trembling, full of regret, full of longing, full of a love he didn't know how to protect. He whispered against my shoulder. I almost lost you. I closed my eyes. You still might, I whispered back. But tonight you took a step. He cried harder. When he finally pulled away, his face was red and blotchy, but there was something new in his eyes. Clarity, humility, love without pride blocking it. He kissed my forehead, something he hadn't done since he was 12. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. I'll answer when I'm ready. He nodded. He understood. As he walked away, Samuel stepped closer. Well handled, he murmured. Mr. Thompson gave a warm smile. That was strength, he said. Real strength. I exhaled, long, shaky, releasing weeks of fear. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not completely healed, not restored overnight, but free. That night, when I returned home, I stood in my living room and breathed in the familiar air. My home, my space, my story. And as I touched the wall, all the memories whispered back. You made us. We're yours. I wasn't done living. I wasn't done fighting. And I wasn't done becoming the woman I was meant to be in this final season of my life. Because now I had the truth, my dignity, my home, and the beginnings of something else. Peace. And I had no idea that tomorrow would bring the first day of my new life. The next morning, sunlight spilled into my bedroom like a soft blessing. Not harsh, not demanding, just warm, gentle, inviting. I stretched slowly beneath my quilt, letting my tired bones wake at their own pace. It felt like breathing for the first time in months. For the first time since all this began, nothing felt heavy. I made myself a cup of tea and stepped out onto the back porch. Birds hopped along the fence. The breeze carried the faint smell of dew and earth. And the house, my house, stood strong around me. Mine, protected, safe. I whispered to the quiet yard. I'm still here. And the world seemed to whisper back. You're finally free. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. I'm okay. I'm thinking. I'm trying. I love you. I stared at the message for a long moment. Old wounds tugged in my chest, but without the sting. Just a bruise healing. I typed back. Take your time. I'm here. Not smothering. Not forgiving everything instantly. Just steady. Boundaried. Real. Elise, on the other hand, didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't attempt any apology. But the consequences of her actions began falling like dominoes. 2 days after the charity dinner, word spread across Marcus's workplace. Not from me, but from witnesses. Her performance at the event, the recording, the care facility plot, it all got around. People whispered behind her in hallways. A few confronted her outright. One woman, a senior partner's wife, told her bluntly, "You don't treat elders that way. Not ever." By the end of the week, Elise had stepped down from her volunteer committee. Her perfect social image cracked wide. Some friends distanced themselves. Others called her manipulative to her face. And Marcus realized the truth. He showed up 3 days later, not at my home, but at his home, bruised by the reality he had been living in. He told me during a quiet phone call, "It wasn't love, Mom. It was control. I didn't see it until she turned it on me." His voice broke. She filed for a separation that same night, said she couldn't couldn't be with a man who chose his mother over progress. My heart clenched, not from sadness, from relief, because sometimes losing someone is the only way you save yourself. In the following weeks, Marcus began showing up for therapy. He joined a men's support group. He started cooking again, something he hadn't done since college, and slowly, cautiously, like a man learning to walk on a mended leg, he began coming by for short visits, always calling first, always respecting boundaries. Sometimes we sat on the porch drinking tea. Sometimes he helped in the garden. Sometimes he simply apologized again, not with words but with effort, with presence, with humility. As for me, I began building a life I didn't realize I'd been denying myself. I joined a local painting class, something I'd wanted to do for 40 years but always told myself I was too busy, too tired, too old. The first day I walked in with my little canvas under my arm, the instructor smiled and said, "You're right on time. Right on time. Not late, not behind, not past my prime. Exactly where I was meant to be." I planted tomatoes and herbs in my backyard. Real ones, not the small pots I used to keep in the kitchen window. I signed up as a volunteer reader at the elementary school. Little ones listened to me with big eyes and soft smiles, like each word I read was a treasure. I hosted tea with the women on my street, widows, grandmothers, single mothers, working ladies, all of us sharing stories, secrets, laughter. And every night before bed, I touched the door frame next to my bedroom and whispered, "You protected me. Thank you." Because a home is not just walls. It's memory. It's spirit. It's the echo of your life. And somewhere in the quiet hours, when I was alone with my paints or my tea, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even sadness, just strength. A quiet, resilient strength that older women carry like a hidden crown. We survive things others think would break us. We rise in moments others expect us to fall. We become unshakable, not because we want to, but because life leaves us no choice. Then one afternoon, Marcus knocked softly on my door. I opened it and saw him holding flowers, simple daisies, the same ones he used to pick for me as a child. "I'm trying, Mom," he whispered. "I know," I said. We stood there for a moment, the soft breeze fluttering between us. I finally stepped aside. "Come in," I said gently. "Stay a while." And he did, not as the man Elise shaped, not as the son who betrayed me, but as a boy I raised, slowly returning step by step. Life moved forward, slowly, deliberately, peacefully. The storm had passed. The wounds were healing. The house was safe. My spirit was intact, and I had become someone new. A woman stepping into the final chapters of her life with dignity, pride, and hope. I found joy again, in small moments, in quiet mornings, in second chances. And now, as I sit in my favorite armchair, the one by the window with a soft cushion and the view of my blooming garden, I'm ready to tell you something too. To you listening to my story, yes you, wherever you are, on your couch, in your bed, on your lunch break, in another country, I want you to hear this. You are stronger than they think. Older does not mean powerless. Quiet does not mean weak. Soft does not mean broken. And no matter who tried to write your story for you, you can take the pen back. Anytime, any age, any moment you decide. So tell me, where are you watching from tonight? What part of my story touched your heart? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when others thought you couldn't? Share it in the comments. Tell me your truth. Walk with me through more stories. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay close. This world is full of storms, but women like us, we know how to survive them, and we know how to rise afterward. Always.